Yo, what's good? I'm Satoshi's mom, and I'm here with Bernardo Cafe, absolute Chad, one of the co-founders of SHILLR. Everybody knows this guy, and if you don't, you absolutely should. He's an amazing human being. We actually got to meet IRL a couple times, and I'm stoked to chat with you today, man. Thanks for coming on the pod. Thanks so much. It's gonna be fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for, ever since you mentioned it. And yeah, definitely been fortunate enough to meet up in person. I think the first time you and I had met up was in New York at like Fuck Render's party.
Yes,
That
dude.
was
Yeah,
dope.
shout out to Grifton who
Yeah.
linked us that night. That was fun.
Yeah. No, great times. But yeah, happy to be here.
Hell yeah, dude. Pretty much. I mean, like, we could just kind of start talking about maybe the origins of Bernardo. I don't really know too much about like your story and like how you got involved in this space. So I'd love to dig into that and just kind of take it from there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I've been in crypto since about 2017. Like I did buy Bitcoin in 2013, and that was I bought it and a few months later I sold it, I think for break even and only put in a couple $100. My older brother was like, he had come home from college and was like talking about Bitcoin, crypto, sounded like a madman. At the time, I had only ever heard about Bitcoin in the context of the Silk Road. So I was like, dude, what are you getting into over there? But he seemed like super excited about it, kind of like shilled our family on cryptocurrency and blockchain. So I bought a little bit and then realized I don't have money to gamble with, so I sold it and then didn't think about crypto until 2017 when the same brother texted me and he was like, "Hey, remember I was talking about that thing called Bitcoin? There's something new called Ethereum that I've been buying like little by little every day. You should look into it." So I bought a little ETH, got set up with a wallet. At the time, I was using my Ether wallet, and the infrastructure is just trash. Like it was so clunky, super confusing. Like you think about onboarding now, and it's like still a confusing process, but back then it was like I had no idea what was going on. Like transactions pending for hours, didn't know how to speed them up, things like that. But anyways, that was 2017. My brother and then my younger brother also got into crypto, and we just went ham on the ICO boom. And yeah, just like tried to get in on whatever we could. And at the time, like was really just trading and not really thinking about anything else other than just trying to get in early on coins, trade them when they pumped, and yeah, basically like rotate into the next thing. And I remember hearing about CryptoKitties when that launched, but I just remember thinking like that's ridiculous. Like doesn't sound interesting to me. Didn't quite get what the excitement was about. And then fast forward, like 2018, prices across the board just crashed. Kind of forgot about crypto. Like held all my ETH, but just wrote it off as like, okay, I'll check back on this later. And then yeah, sure enough, like NFTs start taking off. I'm like somewhat keeping up with what's going on, but at the same time, like super removed. And then just started seeing like everyone talking about NFTs. And this was like late 2020, early 2021. And yeah, then I basically was like, okay, I gotta dive back in. Like I own ETH, it makes sense. And I guess I'll stop there. Like because yeah, I feel like I just rambled for a while, but
Well, no,
yeah,
no, I love it. Yeah. So just to touch back on a couple things there. So like you bought Bitcoin in 2017, and absolutely, there's absolutely no way your older brother was not dabbling with the Silk Road. I mean, that has to be the case.
oh
I'm just
yeah, I
kidding.
mean,
No, no, you don't know that.
no,
uh,
like yeah. Anyways, yeah. No, he had a very interesting friend group, but like friends that seemed ahead of the curve. And
for sure.
he, yeah, like did not hold back on relaying that info to myself and my other brother, which I'm like forever grateful for.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember back in 2016, 2015, a friend of mine who, incredibly sketchy friend, won't name him. He was like selling all this sketchy shit and buying shit on Silk Road. And I always like me and my friend group would always just like laugh about how like he was incredibly sketchy. Like one time his car got towed and he literally like hops the fence and like breaks into his car to like get it out of this towing lot. Like this whole fucking crazy thing, this crazy guy, but funny guy. And he's like, yeah, I just bought like 3,000 Bitcoin. Like, I'm trying to buy this stuff off the Silk Road. And that's when I heard about Bitcoin myself around that same time. But I was way more concerned with like buying all you can drink like every night at some random ass bar when I lived in Tallahassee going to FSU. And like, I couldn't imagine that if I would have been smart enough to even invest in Bitcoin at that time, that I would have been able to hold it, because I wouldn't have even known like what I was doing. Like, and plus I didn't have enough money even to really like be able to understand like, okay, I'm going to buy and hold this. Like I would have
Yeah,
sold it at like the first pump. So yeah, you know, and
exactly.
it's interesting to hear you say that. It's like when you hear someone be like, yeah, I bought Bitcoin back in like 2015 or 2016 or something, and you're like, oh, this guy's rich. And it's like in reality, it's like, fuck, like if someone bought then and held, like they must be absolute just fucking diamond hand beasts. Like I don't know how
Totally.
many people could have done that. Even if they would have been able to hold it, could they have gone through Mount Gox? Could they have gone through like all those mine, like, you know, landmines, so to speak, like on the way to where we are today? But that's sick. Your brother was able to just like give you the heads up and be like, yo, Bernardo, like this is tight. Check it out. And I'm sure that since he had that forward thinking mindset, that it's probably really served him well. So then that segued you then into like getting involved in crypto and
Mhm.
understanding about it. And then when ICOs popped off, how did that go? Like what parallels do you see today versus like dealing with ICOs back then?
Yeah, it's so funny. ICOs back then, because I was still very new to crypto. I was definitely not questioning a whole lot. I see price go up, and that's very exciting. And at the time, I had like basically just graduated school. I had got my first job. I actually had like some money to spend. So it was this exciting time where like I actually had like a couple grand to deploy into whatever came up. And so, you know, we were like scouring any resources that we could find. And it's funny because like I wasn't even on Twitter at the time, which is something that I definitely regret, not hopping on Twitter in 2017. Most of the sources that I was looking at came from posts on Reddit. So subreddits like cryptocurrency or ETH trader, people were just like posting their theses about upcoming projects or coins that had already launched. And left and right, projects were like launching white papers, and I'd try to read them to pretend I knew what they were talking about. But if there was like any buzzword or like resemblance of hype, like I was in, you know? And so I'd say the parallels that I see is that like now, especially with shitcoins popping off, like people have kind of like fully thrown out this idea that you need some like underlying project or like legitimate team to have a cool coin or concept. Like a lot of what we were seeing in 2017 was like decent ideas with okay teams, but that didn't know how to execute, and their ideas were probably grander than the infrastructure could support. So oftentimes you'd essentially see like teams launching with like a vaporware IPO or ICO, I should say, and you'd want to believe that they'd execute, but in reality, like it just wasn't happening and it was way too early. And now with shitcoins, it's like there doesn't need to be any of those promises. People are okay to just invest in a funny idea or a meme or just like a team who can obviously create like really dope content. So it's been interesting seeing people kind of like more and more dismiss the idea that you need like a legitimate business plan to invest in something, which has been very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting when you think about it. It kind of makes me think like initially there was that big pop off of ICOs, right? Everyone's buying them. It's like, well, this is going to be the next Google of this or the next Uber. I don't even know if Uber was out yet back then, but it was like these big grand concepts. And people would think like, yo, this is going to be sick because of the utility, because of the roadmap, because of the team. And then obviously most of them went to zero, and if not all of them potentially. And then NFTs had their run like in 2020, 2021, right? And then, most of those went to zero. And then now today we're at like meme coins popping off, and no one gives a fuck about whether there's a roadmap, whether whatever. It's just the best technology is number go up. And pretty much like the best result actually is people realizing like, I don't want there to be any complicated roadmap that can like fuck up my bag's trajectory.
Totally.
And I wonder, what do you think? Do you think that there will be like another resurgence with NFTs, but then the resurgence will be like kind of similar where people are like, yo, we want to trade shitcoins with pictures again, but we don't want roadmaps. We want it to be as pure as possible, because that's really what meme coins are. They're just like, yo, how do we gamble and do this without all the convoluted bullshit? And it's basically, yo, like here's tokens that people throw money at, and you basically just are like PvP. Do you think that's going to happen with them NFTs again? And it's like going to be like utilities just completely out the window?
Yeah, so it's tough to say. Like, I think there's like two questions. It's like, is there going to be a period where people realize NFTs are incredibly fun and start trading them like pretty manically? I would say yes. Is there going to be a period where we're going to see a project like Cryptodes go to 15 ETH? Maybe not. Like, maybe we won't get to those levels. But I think a lot about, I think it was like summer of 2022. That was the summer that like Goblintown launched for free, went absolutely parabolic. We're All Gonna Die launched around the same time, again, a free mint. And
Ooh,
those were just
yes.
like great story and lore driven projects that launched for free, built a community from the ground up. People had a great time. Yes, both of those projects went like above 1 ETH. I mean, Goblins, I think, went to like 4 or 5 ETH. So there was some like pretty crazy price action, but I think for the most part, people were bored. Market was down, and they wanted good stories and good teams to tell that story. And so 100%, I think there's going to be a period of time where people are trading stories and good teams with NFTs, because like, hey, I like shitcoins as much as the next person, but I am a person that like really loves NFTs and communities that are built. And I think, we're all like, everyone is a story driven person. Like, I think that's what humans crave. It's just like good stories. And especially if there's like visuals that tie to those stories, I think that makes it even stronger.
Yeah, I love that take. Like people are going to trade stories. Like that's going to be another kind of like opportunity. I totally agree. I think that'd be sick to see. I would love to see NFTs get really more popular again, outside of the main ones that are constantly being traded, or maybe not even constantly. Like I saw a take on the timeline from Beanie that was like Doodles or something. It was relating to some project. I think he was talking about how Doodles was like being like featured in some way, and usually that it would like moon the price. But in reality, there wasn't even any secondary sales after this like major type of like announcement. And back in 2021, like, Art Chick would post about something and it would like moon, so it was like a different time. And I don't think we'll ever necessarily see like the exact same thing repeat, kind of like you're saying, like with Cryptodes, which I minted back in the day and obviously flipped for like a 0.01% profit or whatever. But like, I don't know if we'll see that kind of thing happen, but I could totally see like a cool project coming out. Maybe it's a free mint, maybe it's like low cost mint, and then it just garners a community who all wants to see number go up, which is really the ultimate goal for everyone in the game, essentially. Of course, we want to be a part of fun stuff, but at the core of it all, number go up technology is like the most important thing in building good community and good lore, etc. But I think they do kind of like, feed off each other.
Totally.
So it would be sick to see another like WAGDIE kind of
Yeah.
vibe. That
Yeah.
was so much fun, dude. What did they burn? It was like they were
Dude, I
burning
think they
NFTs, high
burned
value
like a
NFTs.
mutant
A
or
Bored Ape?
like, I don't know.
Some shit.
Yeah, I like remember that time because it was like, oh shit, there's a WAGDIE like fire like campfire space. And you just go into
Oof,
the space and it'd be like crackling fire, and like everyone's waiting to see like what happens. And Dude, I think that's what people like. And also
Yeah.
people want to root for a good story. Like you could even take the example of shitcoins with Whiff, um, the, fill the wick type story where it's like random Chad deploys millions of dollars into Whiff, absolute turbo green candle. Um, I don't know, they just messed up and like, yeah, deployed all their capital into one hit. And yeah, like fill the wick kind of became like a movement and people want to see that. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, it has to happen because that's what would be the most entertaining outcome.
Interesting. What would be the most entertaining outcome? Like, what do you think the most entertaining outcome would be for the current market? Not just like shitcoins, but I guess you could include shitcoins, but like just as a whole right now.
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, I think most entertaining outcome probably is seeing some NFT resurgence. Yeah, like new projects launching, new stories being told, probably like using L2s in a unique way. I think for me, most entertaining is Solana ripping to $1,000 and ETH going past 10K, like things like that. But I don't know. Like I feel like it's hard to even imagine what entertaining outcomes are like because like I've seen this be posted time and time again, but if there was a team scripting 2024, they deserve a promotion because like this year's been crazier than I think anyone expected. And so I think it's hard to like even imagine what can happen. So yeah, I have no idea what that could look like.
Yeah, we really are just kind of like playing each day and enjoying each day. And it'll be cool to see something wild happen again, like kind of like the Bohm type thing was just like insane. Like never experienced anything like that as far as like multiples in such a short
Yeah.
time. And like the pre-sale meta, that was cool. And like now, meme coins are just kind of steadily chugging along. A lot of people are making solid gains on a daily basis, but I think that maybe it might start getting even more saturated to where it's like tougher to make gains versus the way it was. I haven't been trading shitters as much or really at all, actually. I actually took a huge loss like on DGen coin like a couple months ago. And ever since then, I was kind of like, oh, you know what? Like, I'm going to kind of chill for a little bit and kind of experience life without constantly thinking about charts and waking up with anxiety and checking my phone immediately for market numbers and shit. And it's kind of been interesting, but I do miss the gambling and all that. I feel like it's incredibly fun. So I don't know, like it'd be cool to see like another NFT resurgence, maybe around storytelling or just some cool concept. I know that Shape is another concept that recently launched. It's not out yet for people to use. I think their test net's up, but have you seen that?
I have, yeah, yeah, and huge shout out to the team at DECA for yeah, essentially expanding and yeah, going forth with Shape. I think it's awesome to see. I think in like the conversation of L2s is an interesting one for sure. I think a lot of people are like, why do we need all these different L2s? Like won't one suffice? And a lot of people are still just like, I don't really want to use L2s. Like the process of bridging is awful and all that stuff, which I don't necessarily agree with. But yeah, I have seen Shape and it's definitely like a bullish signal. And I think just the concept of an L2 for art is a great one.
Yeah, and we also have Abstract, which is the frame like rebranded, and that people are calling it Pudgy's parent chain. They just raised like 11 million from Peter Thiel or his fund or something like that. Maybe need to fact check that exact verbiage, but basically that could be another thing that kind of causes NFTs to pop again. There could be like an L2 meta where we have shape versus base versus abstract, and that's where all the NFT action's happening. Or imagine it happened on Solana. Like Solana has the meme coins popping off. Why not NFTs? I mean, like
Yeah.
if there's cool projects, low cost to transact. But for some reason, it's just like the volume is so vaporous for NFTs in my experience on Solana. So it's
Yeah.
not like, yeah,
I've had similar experiences and have had the same thought of when are Solana NFTs going to take off? Because yeah, like you look at something like Pumped Out Fun, obviously shitcoins on Solana are just have been going off for like almost a year now, honestly. And it doesn't seem like it's going to stop. If anything, it's accelerating. People are seeing the volume and wondering like, when is that going to flow into NFTs? Because I mean, Solana can support NFTs the same way ETH or L2s on ETH can. There's great marketplaces, and I have seen like decent projects launch. I've bought a bunch of Solana NFTs in the past and have traded and gotten lucky a few times, but for the most part, like it just hasn't, the trading scene hasn't really been there, I think, because everyone's focus is on meme coins. So I've been wondering the same thing. There's a really dope project that I have a couple NFTs on called Guides, and it's, you know, artist centric. The artist behind it, his name's Wedico. Yeah, he's been launching these. He had a couple hundred out and then started doing them like daily auctions, which was awesome to see. And that's always been a project that I've been rooting for. But outside of that, I haven't seen like too much that I've kind of like stuck to or that have been super compelling.
Interesting. I haven't heard of that one. I would like to kind of dig into that and see. I respect your takes on like the market and all of that. So that sounds pretty cool. But like wrapping back though, because like, you know, there's all these different parallels, and like I think there's definitely parallels between ICOs and shitcoins, and even with NFTs too. Like basically it's like a game of hot potato, and it's like ultimately someone's going to end up holding the bag at the end of the day. And it just feels better to me holding NFT bags if I have to hold them versus holding like just the idea of a coin. It's just kind of like you hide it in your wallet, like I guess like you would hide an NFT. But I don't know, it feels like a little different. At least like you have some art to vibe with. But um yeah, I'm not sure. Either way, though, it'd be cool to see another meta evolve that like gets people excited and gets people trading and gets people like involved, and you see people minting out. Like, for example, like today I saw I've been seeing like on the timeline people making these small collections of one of ones, and artists are winning that way, which is really cool. Shout out to DK Daniel, not DK Motion, but DK the photographer. He dropped like a 10 piece or no, it's actually a one-off piece. He has like a bunch of bids going on that over 1 ETH. Love seeing that. I think it's very bullish. Shout out to Connor Grasso, who just dropped a 25 piece collection of one of ones. Really dope. I saw a lot of the homies bidding on those, and they all got bidded. So congrats to him. I just love seeing the artists winning, or just creators winning as a whole, because as soon as one does, it creates the meta. Like the meta doesn't happen from just like out of nowhere, like everyone's doing something. It's like one person does something, it's successful, and then everyone starts following it because they see the path ahead. So do you think that there's going to be like, could you predict the next meta, or are you just kind of like, I have no fucking clue? Because I mean, I guess, you know, it's kind of tough to predict shit, but I'm curious on your take.
Yeah, no, I cannot. But before I even go into that, yeah, shout out DK and also shout out Connor. Yeah, I absolutely love to see them doing well and seeing the support that they very well deserve. And yeah, Connor's on the SHILLR team, and we absolutely love him. And yeah, he's just such a great dude. Also have gotten to meet DK a handful of times IRL, which has always been a pleasure. Yeah, I can't predict what the next meta is. I fully agree with you that it really just takes one artist to do something or one project to do something, and it really hits and resonates. I think like the thing is that like no one expects them, because I think it's a perfect storm of like time that it takes place as well as concepts. Like, you know, we look back to like WAGDIE and Goblins, and I think like people were just bored and those minted for free. And I think if we look back to like the open edition meta for art like a year ago or a year and a half ago, you know, I think it was the same thing where like people were a bit bored, and all of a sudden, like, yeah, just one person did an open edition that like popped off and everyone kind of followed suit. If I had to predict though, I think there will be something that involves L2s to keep transaction fees down, and also involves like quote unquote free mints, where people are, you know, collecting art from their favorite artists more of like Patreon style support, where it's like a couple bucks here and there, and they're kind of like brought along for like the story of the artist, or to just like be a constant support for seeing them do like bigger things. So I don't know. It's tough to predict, but I guess that's the thing about this space is like things can move so quickly, and like a meta can pop up when you least expect it, and then yeah, I guess it's your choice, both as collector, artist, or just participant of like whether you want to hop in and yeah, just like ride that meta wave.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see what happens next. And I enjoy taking part in the space, even when shit's going like to hell in a handbasket, I guess, like in a lot of people's eyes and in certain senses. Like it's like, oh, volumes are down, like whatever. But I feel like those are like the best times actually to do dope shit, to experiment. And, you know, we're all here. We all have the opportunity to like respectively blaze the trails. So anyone who has a random idea, I encourage them to just try that shit. I want to circle back though to where we were like in your story of like, so you got involved with shitcoins, or sorry, you got involved with ICOs and then kind of fizzled out, got back involved when ETH came around. And CryptoKitties kind of piqued your interest in a way that you were like, oh, I see what that is, but I don't really see how it would be very interesting. Did you just like dismiss NFTs at that point, or did you kind of start doing research, or like were you working your IRL job and then kind of came back to it when punks popped off? Like, what was the timeline between you finding out about Ethereum and CryptoKitties and then basically like learning about punks?
Yeah, so yeah, like I said, I got into ETH 2017. It was like June of 2017 I bought my first ETH. I think CryptoKitties was maybe like either that month or a month or two after that, I can't remember, but at some point like shortly after CryptoKitties launched, I had like I think the same brother that had told me about Bitcoin and ETH texted us like, "Hey, have you guys seen this? Like people are basically trading photos." And like we didn't know what the hell these things were. I don't think they were being called NFTs at the time. I don't really know, but I just remember like very vividly thinking that's dumb, everyone's going to lose their money, like I don't get it, all that stuff, like just straight dismissing it. But what that taught me is that like to simply dismiss something is such a miss, it's like such an L, it's doing such a disservice to yourself. And if anything, if something is giving you that like visceral reaction of this is dumb, then that means you should actually look into it. I think the same is true for meme coins too. It's like if something gives you like such emotion, and whether it's like hatred or excitement or confusion, like I think that's a signal to actually dive in. So, but anyways, that was like CryptoKitties, and I didn't think anything of it because I completely dismissed it. And now is yeah 2017. Like I said, in 2018 I basically like that winter saw my portfolio go up to like five figures and then crash to like I don't know, like low five figures or even four figures, like I can't remember, but at the time like that was the most money I'd ever seen because like I didn't really have any legit job before that. So it was this like crazy feeling of like, wow, I'm going to retire next year, to then all of a sudden being like, okay, I'm going to be stuck in my job for, the rest of my life. So I like pretty much like forgot about crypto for that entire bear cycle. And then, yeah, it wasn't until like late 2020 where I started like kind of seeing people talk about NFTs. And then early 2021, I had, let's see, it was like it was pretty much at the same time where like I had seen Nifty Gateway, and then I had also been somehow introduced to NFTs on Wax. And Wax was interesting because they were doing a promotion with Street Fighter where if you created a Wax wallet, you could mint a free like promo Street Fighter card, which I thought was dope because I was like, you didn't even need like any Wax to pay for the gas fee, like they just fronted all that, so like no money involved, I could get my first NFT for free, and I thought that was incredibly dope. And then from there like started trading Wax NFTs, started like flipping editions on Nifty Gateway. Through Nifty Gateway, like I was on the Discord, I saw a bunch of people with punks, people that I like deeply respected or got to respect over time. Sergito is one of those people that I saw rocking a punk early on, and he was a huge inspiration for me to like actually dive into CryptoPunks. And there were a couple artists that had dropped on Nifty, and then like immediately after their drop sold out, they went and like bought a punk. And so like at least when I entered the space with like this interest and excitement, all the people I looked up to either owned a punk or were seeking to own a punk. So that in my head just like added a lot of I don't know, like credibility or like notoriety if you owned a punk. I think times have changed like a lot in terms of like how people view punks and sentiment around them. But at the time, it was kind of like the grail of grails. And especially considering that, like, I think when I first saw them, they were like 15 ETH, which I mean, ETH hadn't gone like super parabolic at the time, but that was at least like 30 or 40K USD. So it did seem like super unattainable. So yeah, that's like a little bit more about that story.
So did you cop a punk? Is that a punk that you have right now?
Yeah, so the punk I have right now is my second one. I only own one right now. I had ended up selling the first one that I owned. But the first one that I owned was like is like chin strap, like wild hair, earring, I believe. I can't remember the number, but I might just need to pull it up and drop it. Like once you post this, I'll drop it in the comments. But yeah,
Nice.
I had bought that I think for like 13.5 ETH. And I think I like, when I started trading NFTs, I had a couple ETH from just when I bought it in 2017, and then like lost some ETH on NFTs. And then basically realized like, I was like super active or getting very active in the space. I was like trying to be more involved. I was trying to meet people and make connections. And I made the decision to just go all in. I basically took like all the money that I had at the time, like in savings and like anything that was in like other investment vehicles, like stocks and whatnot, and just like liquidated everything, bought ETH. And then I even took like a 6 ETH loan from my brother to buy the punk because I'm like, I'll be good for it. Trust me, bro. And yeah, so I bought the punk, and it was like this crazy feeling because I knew it was a good idea, but it was obviously still risky. And it was just kind of that moment where I was like, I'm just going all in because like the risk reward here is like way too large. There's like so much that I think
Yeah.
I could gain from just owning a punk at this like point in time.
Did you end up flipping that punk like near the top or
No,
like,
not at all. No, I held through that crazy run because they hit like, I don't know, 100 or 150 ETH or something. And I remember
yeah.
thinking like, because yeah, it's all like, I guess so much of this is like context. Like when punks ran up like crazy, I had a super profitable trading cycle. Like, I went all in on NFTs, was like active more than I'd like to admit, and just yeah, did like pretty well trading. So when punks ran up, I didn't feel like I needed to sell it. And I also felt like I was super attached to the punk. And like a part of me definitely thought they'd go higher, but even if they went to like $1 million, like I don't know, I was pretty like I had drank the punk's Kool-Aid, and I don't know if I would have sold it at the time. So I didn't sell that like Pico top. And I ended up buying this punk, owning two punks at the same time, and then realizing like I'm overexposed, I should ditch one. So I ended up selling the first one just because I really fucked with the wild blonde and the sunglasses. So
Yeah, it's a good punk. It's
thanks.
really solid.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I see that skin color punk and I immediately think of you. Like, no,
No, I
I don't really
appreciate it.
know many other people with the darker skin punks, so that I can think of off the top of my head. Besides the original Sartoshi, like one or two trait one, the Baldy,
Hmm.
like dark skin punk, that one I think of as well. But when I think of like mocha, like or cafe colored punks, like yours is like top of mind. So that's pretty
Totally. Yeah, no,
brand
thanks. I mean,
awareness
if
right
you
there on the PFP.
oh, yeah. No, and like Sartoshi, his original punk comes to mind. Also, Fungible, my teammate, he's got like a dark skin punk. Barack
Oh yeah,
Camo
absolutely.
also
He has
does.
the
So like
beanie,
there,
right?
yeah, he's got the beanie with the eye patch.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, that's a
but
good
yeah,
one.
it's so funny because like I don't know. There's yeah, I guess I don't necessarily want to go into it on this pod, but like there has in the past been like just these funny arguments or like topics that come up about like the skin tone of punks and like where they trade at and like who's buying them.
Yeah.
And historically speaking, like dark skinned punks find their way to the floor over like an albino punk. And then it's also like, hey, if these PFPs are like digital representations of our IRL being, like, is it okay to rock dark skin punk if you don't have dark skin, like things like that. So it's always just been like this funny argument or debate that like no one has actual answers to, and like at the end of the day it's kind of like a silly argument. But I've always thought that was kind of a funny element of like at least the punk that I owned.
Yeah, it is. I think it just represents like the people buying them potentially. I mean, I don't know. It is what it is essentially, but I would happily buy any floor punk, like if I was in the market for it. I have been a couple times, but I never pulled the trigger on it. Eventually, I think I'll get one, but right now it just feels like too much of an investment versus like the rest of my portfolio. So I think though one day like I'll just pull the trigger on it, whether it's just being degen or whether it's like, yo, like this is my forever type punk, and that'll be sick. That's
Yeah,
what my PFP is inspired off of,
yeah.
obviously, is punks, the
No,
alien
I
punk. That's what got me in NFTs actually, is punks. So
oh yeah, how did you hear about punks?
dude, I was just learning about NFTs and I realized collectibles online is fucking dope. So like I got into Rarible. I saw Mark Cuban posting about it. And then I was like, well, I want to learn more about this because I see collectibles as like the dopest shit ever, like IRL. Like I loved collecting shit my whole life. Pokemon, obviously, was like the big one when I was a kid. And then I saw like people can do this, but online. That makes perfect sense because people will want to flex things for status. It just
Mm,
lined up perfectly. And then I saw punks, they were like 8 ETH. So like at the time, ETH was like cheap. I should have bought one and I didn't, but I was buying other shit. So it didn't really make sense why I didn't pull the trigger on it. I even told my friends about it. I was like, this is cool. And then they rose up and slowly got out of my reach. And then I was like, fuck. But I remember seeing them being like
yeah.
8 ETH, and ETH was like $1,000. So it was like an 8 grand investment, but it wasn't at the time like obvious to me because I wasn't in Discord and like in the trenches with like other degens, like noticing who was using them. I just thought it was cool that people were spending that much money on a digital picture. So it
Yeah.
kind of like got me involved.
Totally. I mean, yeah, it was like pretty similar. When I saw punks, I think when I first saw them, they were like 10 ETH, and then it took me a while to make the decision to buy one, and then they had gone up a little bit. But I remember thinking the same, that people are spending real money. Because I mean, a lot of people, I guess, look at ETH and it's like, oh, it's fake internet money. I've never really had that mindset. I've always like considered my ETH very much real money. And so I'm thinking like, wow, people are spending all of this on a digital asset. And I don't know if at the time I had seen like people like D's and a few others in the punks chat who like I knew came from the RuneScape background. And I just have always thought about like party hats, Santa hats, like Halloween
Yeah.
masks, like these like rare items in RuneScape that when I was growing up, like I couldn't buy because I just never had enough GP. And that over time, I'd realized like people literally are spending real money on RuneScape items. Like, of course, it makes sense for people to spend real money on NFTs that are like, you know, ownership is provable on the blockchain. And especially considering like through 2017, like I had realized like people are making so much money that they've like never had before, and these people aren't willing or are willing to gamble with it. And so when you combine those two, it's like you have these people who grew up playing video games online, and those games have gone on to like retain popularity and have only become like more popular over time. People are spending their money on those items. Now those same people have like what seems like infinite bake internet money to just look like that's or we bought. Yeah, when like that's just the crazy stuff.
Dude, I don't know if the connection's like going in and out. Can you hear me clear?
Yeah, I hear you. Did I just cut out?
Yeah, it might just like a little bit. I don't know if it's my end or what. Here, let me do a quick test real
I
quick. But if you can hear me, oh, it seems to be working fine. It might be okay. You're good. You're good. But okay, so to reiterate on that, like punks obviously made so much sense because it's like, okay, digital pictures, ownership, status, it just made sense. And as they kind of creeped up in price, it's like, wow, like people are spending money on this shit. And that's fucking cool. And it's inspiring. It's like, and it got me involved in NFTs. It got you deeper down the rabbit hole. So like at that point, when you pulled the trigger on the punks, you kind of rode through the NFT game of like, trading a shit ton. Were you like in the trenches on Discord every day? Were you full time at that point? And like, when did SHILLR come into the picture? When did Fungi come in the picture? When did like the homies and like all of that like end up starting? Because I think you guys are like one of the most visible brands, SHILLR, in the NFT space, in the Web3 space as a whole. Like, I love your guys' brand. I love what you guys do. I love the events you put on. Like, you guys are absolutely in it five the art, like literally. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, where did you go from like NFTs to like, yo, like I want to start this awesome brand? And how did Fungi get involved? And how did they begin essentially?
Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. Also, yeah, I need to give you a shout out because you've supported us for so long, just both like on the timeline as well as actually being a part of our community and like financially supporting us at times through our media passes. So yeah, you've been like an absolute gem to have. And I mean, not just yourself, but so many other people. So thank you for just being there and for the kind words. But
Much
yeah,
love, man. I
so
appreciate that.
hell yeah. So yeah, I would say like I can mark February 2021 as the time where like I really dove in deep, and then I didn't buy my punk until like either late May or early June. I would need to check the chain, but I was not full time then. I mean, I would probably, looking back, I would say I was, because just how much time I was spending, and the job that I had before forming SHILLR was like, it was a great job, but it was a job where like, you know, everything was remote because of COVID. I could like do a little bit of work, get what I needed to done, and then just focus on NFTs for the rest of the day. So like in that sense, I was basically like full-time trader. And yeah, like 100% in the trenches of Discord, scouring Twitter, like trying to get into as many group chats as I could just to see what people were talking about. And like, I mean, the amount of sleep I got during those few months, like that summer and fall, like very small, and like, you know, would just chronically be online, which was not super healthy, but like I wouldn't change it for the world. Anyways, yeah, it was like late May, early June. I got my punk, and then mid June, Rugema on our team, he's one of the founders of SHILLR. He put out a tweet basically saying, I think there is an opportunity to do marketing in the space. Does anyone want to like get a group chat going, or like, does anyone want to talk through this? Like, I forgot exactly what he said. And I had talked to him a couple times, and we had been in the same Discord servers, like trading the same stuff. So like he was very much a familiar face, though I wasn't like homies with him at all. And no one on my team who initially formed SHILLR, like I was close with or even knew. Um, and so yeah, like I DM'd Rugema after that tweet. A few other people did, and then it was like 7 people. Like I think he just like created a really quick Discord server, invited us all. It was like 7 people that were kind of interested. um it was like within 24 hours one person was like, yeah, this isn't really for me. So then it was like 6 of us, and then somehow we just all had like the exact same vision, and also had this like hunger, and like we wanted to build something dope. And the vision at the time was basically like, there's a lot of really cool shit going on, a lot of people building stuff that are actually like a net positive to the space, that aren't really getting like the spotlight that we think they deserve, whether they're like artists or builders. It's just like pretty hard to cut through the noise. And then you also look at the people who are cutting through the noise, and it's like rugs left and right, or like just like influencer shills and things that didn't really sit right with us, like very much like quick flash in the pan type deals. And we were like, well, what if we could help projects kind of build for the long term, which is why we landed on the name SHILLR, because we were like, yeah, we're kind of flip that name to shill, or that word, and like flip it on its head and kind of like reclaim ownership and actually shill like quality projects. So yeah, and then it was me, a few other people. Fungi was one of those people that also responded. And I didn't know him at the time. Like I said, I didn't really know anyone. And I did not really question that at all, because I was like pretty used to interacting with people online. And like you kind of like learn, I'm sure you feel the same way, but like you can like gauge someone's vibe like pretty quickly off first interactions, either like seeing what they're posting on the timeline or even hopping on a call. Like your bullshit detector goes off for sure. And in the case of the founding members of SHILLR, like it was all really good vibes. And then, like I said, we all kind of had a similar vision. So that's the origins of SHILLR. And yeah,
Damn.
like I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Fucking dope. Yeah, if you hop on a call and someone's asking to animate your PFP, maybe they probably aren't the most the most trustworthy. But like, yeah, you instantly can be like, yo, like I can tell if this person has a good heart and good vibe, even when they're completely anon. And it's amazing how much that I've trusted people who are completely anon, who I've never even heard their voice, just even talking to them through Discord or something like, and you're doing deals with people for tens of thousands of dollars, like especially in the bull of like the last NFT bull, like, yo, let's do this NFT trader deal. It's like, I'll trade you this, you give me that, I'll give you some ETH on top, like whatever. And that's cool. And like, so yeah, I 100% feel that. And like, it's awesome to hear how you guys actually formed just so organically. And the mission that you guys are on was really the connecting piece of like, yo, we want to make this space better. And like people who have been in this space, who also have like IRL experience building stuff, but people who've been in this space like in the trenches, the conversion of those 2 points, like people who've been in the trenches for the last few years plus who have business experience IRL, those are the people that I'm like always willing to bet on, whether it's financially or just like shilling them on the timeline and like telling people about them. And you guys are definitely both of those things. Like you guys have done some amazing events. I'm really bullish on SHILLR, and I love that I'm a member, that I was able to snag that premium pass. Like that's fucking sick. Like, so hell yeah.
Yeah,
But
thank you, man. And
yeah,
yeah, the only other thing that I was gonna say is like, I didn't like come into this space being like I'm gonna find a job, or even like I'm gonna like help build something. I had like absolutely no intention, and it was kind of like, hey, I'm spending so much time like trading and researching, and I'm also like actively contributing to the conversation on Twitter. Like that was a huge thing. It was like, what, like, how can I just share my thoughts free flowing at the time? And so then when I saw Rugema's post, I was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. And also like, I'm not really getting any fulfillment from the job that I'm in right now. Like it pays the bills and lets me gamble on, internet coins, but I'm not really getting much out of it. And so I was like, when I saw that post, I'm like, this could actually be something. And then it turns out that the team that had formed at the time was just like absolute gems. Just, yeah, like everyone kind of brought a different perspective, but we all like came from the trenches of trading shitcoins and NFTs. And like, I think we were able to take that and help projects. And so, yeah, just appreciate the kind words.
dude, yeah, fuck yeah. Like the organic part is absolutely key too, because like if you're just like, yo, I want to build shit, I want to extract from the space, like, you really have to live this space before you actually like can even probably successfully extract, because it'll be really obvious to most of the people here, especially at this point. So yeah, like I'm really bullish on SHILLR for sure. Like you guys are doing dope shit, and I love to see it always, and I'll always support you guys. But I love hearing the origin story. I love hearing like how you guys came together, and like I hope even people listening too can be inspired by like, yo, like, I think there's this random quote. I'm gonna butcher the fuck out of it, but it's like the like people who, like a small group of people who aren't afraid to try to change the world are actually the only people who ever have. Like it's always been a small group of people who kind of got together and they were like, yo, let's fucking change this game. Let's do something. That's always what's kind of driven innovation. But circling back to like the journey and you kind of getting to the point of where like you started SHILLR, Was this like in the peak of the NFT bull run, or was this like afterwards? Like when did that happen? Like on the timeline?
Yeah, this was like either like smack dab in the middle or slightly before, because this would have been like, I think like mid-June we formed, and then shortly after that we got our first clients, and then yeah, it was just like game over from there. Like the ball kept rolling. I do think that like that August, September was probably peak. At the time, that was like our block summer was going crazy. I remember talking with some friends. I had like minted a few Fidenzas and like no one knew
Ooh,
what was coming. Like I just remember showing them to my friend being like, "Hey, like I just minted these. Like, aren't these cool? They're like, procedurally generated and they're all code." And he was like, "Yeah, these actually look really dope. Like, what are those?" And like, that was like before things went super crazy. So like, yeah, I would say when we formed SHILLR, it was like slightly before the super peak, but obviously volume was high and people were excited, and there was this just like sense of I don't know, like you can sense it on the timeline that things were heating up. So yeah, that was like a little bit before the like super peak in the timeline.
nice. So you minted Fidenzas. What the fuck?
Yeah,
That's
so
epic.
yeah, I mean, I wish it was more epic in the sense that I like was able to hold longer, but I had so Fidenzas was the first Art Blocks curated project I'd ever minted. I had seen what was it? It was shoot, I'm blanking on the name. Like it has rhythm in the name, but a few projects like before Fidenza came out, I had seen a few people talking about them, and then I think I had seen Squiggles, but I didn't really get them. I just kind of dismissed them. Like Squiggles were pretty similar for me compared to CryptoKitties, where instantly dismissed them like on the surface, and then like later on like dug in. But yeah, I had like don't know where I saw, but yeah, I think it was Punk's chat that people were talking about the upcoming mint on our blocks. And I was like, oh, these are cool. Like, what are they? Is this art? How are these made? Minted a few. I remember thinking like, I'm going to flip these like for like double, like because I minted a couple and I think it was like 1 mint per wallet, but I loaded up a couple wallets and minted them. And I told some friends about them. And yeah, like I remember immediately flipping one and then holding a couple others. And I eventually, like, that's how I got into Justin Aversano's Twin Flames, because I was able to trade a Fidenza for a Twin Flame. And then I held my last Fidenza for a little bit longer. But yeah, like I definitely got lucky. But it's fun to look back on. And yeah, like it just goes to show like times were crazy and they still kind of are.
Yeah, they really, I mean, like, it really is still fucking nuts. Fidenzas are selling for 30 ETH. I mean, that's a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
It's gen art. Like, and it, the provenance of it too. Like, it was art blocks curated, some of the first art blocks. So, like, and shout out to Snowfro too. Like, awesome wrap up on the Squiggles contract as
Hmm.
well. Like, that guy's an absolute visionary. And, like, I hope that, like, the stories of people like Snowfro and people like even the degen stories of being in the trenches in the early days continues to inspire people to create shit, because like that is the backbone of what this space is driven off of, is people taking risks to create shit. Like Snowfro taking the risk to create art blocks when people weren't even 100% sure about, like, let alone what gen art was, but like sure about like people buying some more sophisticated art, not just PFPs. So like taking risks is part of this game that makes the space iconic. And like, yeah, a lot of shit fails, but at the same time, like, taking the risk to mint the Fidenzas, like taking the risk to buy a punk, taking a risk to be a creator on like the leading edge. So yeah, that always gets me fired up.
Yeah.
But like, what do you think about gen art now, like versus then? Because obviously
Hmm.
things are different, but like, I still am fascinated and want to eventually execute my own collection of code generated art. That's been something I've wanted to do since I learned about CryptoPunks. But like, what do you think about gen art
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I was actually gonna like mention this when you were talking about Snowfro, because, okay, so what I think about Gen Art now, I love it. I will always be here for Gen Art. I think code-based art in general is very fascinating. It's like one of the things I'm most interested in from a collector standpoint, and even from like a creator standpoint, though I haven't created code-based art or really even any art. I think if I were to allocate time, it would be something generative. But yeah, the thing with Gen Art, I think, is that the space has really matured over time. And I say what I'm gonna say with like absolutely no disrespect or ill will towards anyone, but I think a lot of the stuff that had launched on Art Blocks Curated, amazing things. But I think it was caught up in the mania of NFTs, which is why we saw things like Fidenza go super parabolic, things like Ringers and, you know, every other of those like big Art Blocks Curated collections kind of see these prices. I think the art is great and the artists behind them have like a plethora of experience and have great stories, but I do think that, yeah, a lot of those just got caught up in the mania, which is somewhat of a shame. But I think the space has matured in the sense that, like, you look at something like Fidenza and can appreciate what it gave to the space at the time and like the beauty of it and, you know, what it kind of meant. But people are realizing like it wasn't the most like technically complex collection. It didn't have like anything that necessarily like needed the blockchain to exist. I think the area where I'm most interested in is that intersection where it's generatively created, but also is like crypto native and uses the blockchain in a unique way. I know you had Crypto Bushi on your podcast recently, and I was actually listening to it. And he's an example. I think Chain Left is also an example. There's a few other artists kind of in that cohort. I mean, 113 obviously
Yes.
comes to mind, of people like really pushing the bounds. And so for me, whether you call it generative or code based or, you know, it's like this huge, I guess, basket term, that's kind of where I'm most interested from just like enjoyer standpoint of like, what are you doing that hasn't been done, and how is it using blockchain in ways that like I personally, being like left curve enjoyer, can't understand at the surface, but once I dive in, like I can gain a little bit more from it. Which yeah, just going back to like your point on Snowfro and his story, it's the reason why the space that I host each week generated. It's why like I love that space so much, because you get to tease those stories out and get to hear from people who don't always have like the biggest spotlight, but that I think are just doing like crazy shit. So yeah, those are like my current thoughts on generative art. And through the series that I host, Generated, I feel like I've been able to kind of expand like my understanding and even like gen art history a little bit. For the longest time, I thought generative art with this was this new thing that art blocks kind of pioneered. But it was only until like a year ago where I realized like generative art has been around for a long time, even before computers. You don't need code to create generative art, but I think a lot of people in this space think of gen art as like art on the blockchain, which art blocks obviously popularized. So yeah, I've been like happy to go down that path of just like I don't know, gaining more info and knowledge on what gen art actually is.
I love the intersection there that you mentioned, which is like not just code-based art, but also like maybe hash-based. Like the art itself is like actually generated from that moment in time on the Ethereum blockchain, affecting its output. Like, and you know, shout out to people like Crypto Bushi, Chain Left, who, by the way, I'd love to have Chain Left on this pod as well. Chain Left, if you're listening. But also shout out to people like Did as well, DIID, who created Efficax and also who helped Xcopy get his first on-chain edition out there. He's going to be on the pod actually this Friday. And he's someone who's definitely pushing the bounds, who just got a grant from the Nouns DAO to build out his advancing art platform. And I'm super stoked to chat with him because like he it's like these types of people like Crypto Bushi and him who are like trying to create art from like things more than just it looks cool, but like actually like pushing bounds of like what we know art to be, pushing bounds of like the concepts of how to create this art, and doing performance art using the blockchain. Like I think that is incredibly underappreciated still, especially too like no hate towards on-chain summer, which like I use Base. I think Base is great. I love that their mission to onboard people is there, and pushing forward with that. But like literally just sniping the on-chain term has done some damage, I think, to the on-chain community, in the sense that on-chain now means using Base versus like being actually on-chain, like on ETH. So like I think there's a lot of room to grow right there for the on dash chain community, whether it's just cool drops and working on cool shit, or like creators getting inspired to try making generative art, like do a P5JS course on YouTube, or hit up one of your friends who's like an advanced person in the space using like concepts to make on-chain art. But
Yeah.
yeah, it fires me up too. I love the concept of like, yo, at this moment, this was the output and it's not recreatable.
Totally. Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned the on-chain versus on-chain debate of like bases on-chain summer versus what's actually on the blockchain. And
Yeah.
anyone looking into the space would be like, what, like, why is that causing such a strife or controversy? But it's like, I think people, like, rightfully so, are like, you're like gentrifying what it means to be on chain. Like, you're basically like taking over this term. And I have seen a lot of people say, like, the dash matters, like on dash chain represents something that's on the blockchain, stored on chain without dash is more of like a marketing term that yeah, like some people have just like commandeered. So it's so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways.
Yeah, I think like it's normal to see like somebody come in and capitalize from a marketing standpoint on something that, they want to make that term well known. They've got tons of marketing dollars and exposure and awareness, and they are doing cool stuff too. Like they are growing the space. So like no hate towards them and no shade. But like at the same time, like they definitely did snipe that term, and I don't think it helps the on dash chain community. But if anything though, it creates another opportunity where people can build out the on dash chain community even further and make it well known in its own way. And I think Did is a great example of someone doing that, creating tools for people to make on-chain art. He even made a tool to create on-chain art on Base. So like, you can make on-chain art, on-chain on-dash chain art. And maybe that's something like double entendre that people can like play off of and make art from. Maybe Bushi will listen to this and use that somehow. Like
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I get fired up when I talk about generative art because I think it's something sick. Like I participated in a good handful of art blocks drops. And I remember like one of my first big L's in the NFT trading realm was buying some art blocks playground piece that like was super hyped and then immediately lost like 90% of its value. And I was like, fuck, like, you know, damn, like I don't need to be buying this shit to trade and flip. Like this is like stuff to buy to really be an appreciator, because I think it doesn't really have the same flippability in a sense versus like a PFP. So it's like a bigger risk, I think. But then again, if you bought Fidenzas and just held them, you probably would have been able to capitalize in a great way. But yeah, I don't want to get too carried away. I think that overall, like the space as a whole will keep evolving. It will keep growing. There will be more creators that come in, but those people out there who push into the void and they don't know whether they're going to fail or not, those are the people who create metas. And the more people that do that, then the more metas that can be created and the more creators that can be rewarded and the more that the space can grow. So like, I want to ask you, like, as somebody who's been in the space for a while and who has a lot of passion for the space, what do you think is like the next steps to continue growing this space? Like whether that's from the perspective of SHILLR or from the perspective of your spaces that you host, like how are you helping to contribute and pushing forward in the space to help it grow and help more people learn?
Yeah, that is a really good question. Yeah, I feel like it's not on like one or two people. It's like really a community effort. Like if you're in the space and you want to see like mass onboarding, you kind of need to like play your part and do something. I think outside of me, what would be great for growth in the space is like onboarding obviously is huge. You're seeing things like MoonPay's recent like moonshot like shitcoin app that's like an easy like you could use your credit card to like trade memes. Like I think that's one example. I think products like Privy are a great onboarding tool where you create something, you create an account on like a crypto native app through your telephone number or your email. Like those infrastructure plays I feel like are huge. So the more we have those and just the more that we have people like creating, I don't know, like user friendly experiences, I feel like are going to get us there over time. There's this huge like push and excitement for consumer crypto applications, which is not necessarily like the sexiest term. And someone honestly should create something new to call all of that. But I think those types of like consumer experiences are going to be the thing that just keeps driving adoption. In terms of like where I'm focused on and where my team's focused on, I do think that it comes through with like the conversations that we host. My team, it hosts 5 spaces each week, each having like a different topic or like type of conversation. And it's not something that we're doing yet, but eventually like all those conversations are recorded and will be published to like Buzzsprout to be listened to on Spotify and stuff. So like I think like the more people that are having conversations that bridge the gap between like just talking about what's interesting in the space, but also like telling the stories of creators, I think that's the most interesting thing because like someone who's not in the space, who doesn't own crypto, doesn't have a wallet, whatever, like I think stories of artists are still exciting. Maybe the stories of like very specific on-chain stuff aren't as compelling. So the more of that, like just stories of artists and creators and builders are I think what's going to get people interested. And then also like we've had a big push recently, which I know you're aware of like hosting banger events and trying to figure out ways to loop in people outside of the space. So I feel like because a lot of things that you see in person, it like hits so different and it's kind of that like light bulb moment for a lot of people. Whether it's like, I've seen people talk about seeing a Bitcoin ATM for the first time and having that be like a whoa, like what is this thing type moment. And I'm not saying Bitcoin ATMs are like the onboarding tool that we need more of, but I do think that in-person experiences play a huge role, especially, I mean, pretty much only if they're like extremely positive experiences too. So that's when I see things like what Cool Cats and Doodles have done. Like a lot of people try to like clown on them or like make fun of that they're so like childish and like family friendly. But ultimately, like if you want to onboard more people, like you need to kind of hit younger generations and people that are like just starting to explore the internet and learn about what blockchain can do. So a big part of it, I think, is like that combination of just storytelling, education, but also like having experiences that like normies can attend and be involved in some way.
That's an incredible answer, man. Absolutely agree on all fronts there. I love how involved you guys are from SHILLR, like hosting so many spaces, creating these events, creating opportunities for people to connect. And like that's the domino effect, I guess you could say, or maybe I could say it better, like it's the ripple effect that if we can do something one-to-one, that's fantastic. But I think that to really make the large impact, it's about creating opportunities for a ripple effect to be created to where like you'll impact so many people that you don't even know every single individual person who's been impacted by the effort, and it's things like IRL events that really drive home like people's participation in the space or gets people interested and gets people understanding like, wait, what's happening here? Like, I want to be more involved in this. Like, because ultimately, I think at the core, like 99% of people working in a corporate job are not wanting to stay there for their entire life. It's always kind of like a means to an end. And for me, Web3 has been something that shows this light of like, wow, like I can monetize things online in a way that is different than just like having to clock in, clock out. Like in a way that I can own content, I can own things and trade them verifiably, like making these light bulb moments basically. And like I think you guys do a lot of that for sure, especially with
Yeah.
like hosting a lot.
Thank you, man. Yeah, and like only thing I'd add to that is that I think we don't think enough about the power that a conversation can have. Like, you know, if you talk to a friend, and I'm not saying like go and like shill your friends on crypto or your family, but like I do think that conversations over time, like seeds are planted, you know, your friend goes home and like has this idea and like maybe chooses to do more research on their own. It's like the same reason why my older brother came to me is he had a friend in college who was talking about Bitcoin, and you know, like his interest got piqued, and then my brother relayed that info to me, and then you know, from there I was talking to my friends about it. And like I think there can be those domino effects that, again, I'm not saying like go knock door to door and like tell people about like Vitalik and how he's our Lord and Savior, but you get what I mean. It's like having conversations, and then I think like over time, once there's actual like real world applications to blockchain, like I think we're still in this state where like people look at meme coins and NFTs and it doesn't make sense because it's all just kind of a zero sum game. But I think over time we will get more of those real world examples that will be like, you know, topics in a presidential debate and like very highly contested things that will get conversations started, and eventually like people won't even realize that they're interacting with the blockchain at all. So I do think another part of it probably is just like real world use cases and like IRL infrastructure.
Yeah, the people that are in the generation below us, essentially, the Zoomers or whatever people want to call them, or even below that, I don't know what the term is for them, but they are natively digital. So, like, they're natively growing up in these atmospheres of understanding digitized concepts. So, like, I do believe that, like, you know, I go to this museum nearby me. There's a Dolly museum near here, and I saw in the like they were doing a little exhibition outside of the main exhibit for Dolly and for Monet at the time, and basically the exhibit was people from grades 6 to 8 who were creating art and submitting it to be under this theme of something. And I don't remember what the theme was, but all of the different pieces, they're all there and they show their mediums. And I would say probably about 60 to 70% of the 100 pieces there, the medium was digital art. And that's really interesting because it's like digital art right now is this concept of like NFTs, and they sold this pixel for $1 million, and this guy made $69 million from selling dick pics, you know, Beeple or whatever. And like people don't really understand what this concept of NFTs actually is. They think it's just kind of like some pyramid scheme or something so far out from like what it actually is that it actually just represents verifiable ownership. And the reason that art is being used as a concept is because you can verifiably own and trade, and then, you know, like whatever, all of that. But like the future, I think, holds such a unique possibility of like it's no longer digital art, it's literally art. Like all art is going to be like physical art is going to be more rare essentially in this. I mean, that's pretty wild take, but like digital art is so much easier to scale because you don't need to have storage for it. Like there's so many reasons, you know, like one influencer can create 1 billion impressions on a digital artwork versus like 1 billion impressions on a physical artwork would take, you know, so many people having to go see it in person. So I don't know. It's pretty wild
Yeah,
takes, and I like to talk about digital art and the future of it and how young people are natively digital. And I think like more and more as these walls get knocked down of like when we'll be able to use Apple Pay to have someone get onboarded. Like imagine how easy it is to buy a coffee with Apple Pay, but like buying an artwork with Apple Pay, and it creates you a wallet, and then that piece is sent to the wallet, and then your email is then sent the wallet app address and maybe some instructions. But like, you know, the more and more that we get to that point, the closer that we get to that point, the closer we get to like this being just art. So it's kind
totally.
of interesting. I mean, I'm
Yeah, I
probably
mean,
rambling.
nah, Dude, it's super interesting. I mean, I could talk for days about just digital art and like the place that it's going to play in our current lives in the future. One thing that I was just thinking about, because you were talking about how like 70% or whatever of these kids' art pieces in the museum were digital. When you also start to think about TikTok and Instagram Reels and just how we show up online, and just the barrier to creating is lower. And like if you think about it, pretty much everything's art, whether it's visual art, music, or even performance art, which I see like a lot of, TikTokers and personalities kind of playing in. Um, People are like just creating left and right. And now like the barriers have never been lower, especially with like automated systems and AI. And so, yeah, whether it's visual, music, or performance, like it's clear that the digital route is only getting bigger. And I think people are starting to realize like, man, I'm creating, and yeah, like I'm making money, but like I might want to think about creating in a more like decentralized manner, or to like really capitalize from my IP. We were talking with Jason Zhao from Story Protocol yesterday on our building space, and they're creating, basically like IP layer to monetize your IP. And it's something that I hadn't really thought about before, but like as people take more to TikTok and Instagram and like are building out these IPs, whether based on themselves or say through an NFT collection, having the rails to like monetize that and to track like remixes and inspirations over time, I feel like is going to be something we're going to see a lot more of. So yeah, it's pretty crazy just to think about like what is being built right now to support more of a online and digitally native creator economy in the future.
It's wild. It's absolutely fucking wild. There's things that I don't even know about that are being created, like things that are in the future going to happen that people are going to be like, wow, I can't believe we lived without this in this space. And it's just all the creators taking the risk on putting it out there in the world, and, taking the time to go and like talk about it and spread the word on that mission. So, like, it's going to be very interesting to see what it's like when, our generation is the president of the United States. Like, our generation is the majority of people that are making different things happen in the world. And like the generation below us then starts to be involved. And it's like all of these things are going to change and shape the world. And it's like, if you really look at it with a zoomed out perspective, how early that we actually are, it's fucking crazy. Like, what are these NFTs that have provenance and that have creators that are never quitting? What are they going to be worth when like there's a limited amount of them and people are learning more and more, and like eventually in 10 years, 20 years, it's like, holy shit, like that was made in 2021, that was made in 2022 or 2024. Like, damn, like that's how early these people were to this movement. Because now it's still like people don't even know what NFTs are still. People like barely know that. They know the buzzword NFT, but like digital art is still so early. Like, it's wild. And we're a part of it now, and we're being able to do shit now, like talk about this stuff or create companies that help proliferate the mission of it all. And how exciting that is just fucking mind boggling.
I agree with you. And like, I'm not super well versed in art history or even just history in general, but you think about like periods of time, and it's never a year, it's never a few months. It's like 5 years, 10 years, like 20 years of like periods. And I think the same can be said about like the digital art renaissance, like crypto art, blockchain, or art on the blockchain. Like we are in that period right now. And I mean, it's nowhere near over. If anything, it's just getting started, and it's very exciting and like hopeful to think about what the future can hold, and to also look back at things that either are being minted right now or have been minted in the past few years, and to look at it from the lens of like historical standpoint. And like 20, 30, 40 years from now, people might be like, wow, like I can't believe, people were able to collect Satoshi's Mom edition for zero point zero 0.01 ETH, and now the cheapest one I could get is $6.9 million. Like I just think there will be a lot of those cases, and sure, like not everything will stick. In fact, probably most things won't stick, but the things that do will probably retain like cultural relevancy. And yeah, like I think back to like watching like MTV or VH1, and like I don't know who used to do this. I think it was VH1, but like they do like I love the 90s or I love the 80s and like call out like a bunch of like historically significant things that happened during those times. I'd imagine something similar in the future, except much more maybe highbrow of like these are the highlights that came out of like the initial NFT and digital art boom. And I'm sure some things that are just like you look at them and they're just like free right now will probably kind of become like pretty significant over the time. So yeah, it's
Truly.
exciting waters to be in.
It's fucking sick, dude. Like, keep pushing this space forward, man. Like, you are absolutely in at 5 the art. Like, no fucking doubt. And the guys that we get to surround ourselves with, and the girls, obviously, guys, girls, everybody, like, that we get to surround ourselves with in this space that are all on this mission of like wanting to grow this space, wanting to do dope shit every day, like, you know, committing our mission of life to growing the digital art world and doing dope shit in this space. And while it's so early, like we don't often see the fruits of our labor until it's been a while of sowing those seeds. And we had that massive run up and the taste of what's possible. But I do believe like when we do have more global understanding and exposure, it's like the creators and the people in this space, not just artists, but creators, entrepreneurs, builders in this space are going to be rewarded so massively on a long enough timeline of just seeing through the vision of expanding what we're doing here. And whether that's through galleries, museums, you know, IRL events, like artworks, one of one editions, large collections, generative art, you know, code-based art, like PFPs, like everything. Like it's so worthwhile to me to be building in this space and to dedicate life, our lives essentially to growing this space. And like it gets me super fired up because I just think that we are so early and digital art is so inevitable. There's nothing that anybody can do to stop this movement at this point. It's not even a question of if, it's just a question of when. So yeah, it gets me excited, man. I think it's been such an epic time here chatting with you today. I know we're kind of over on time. I appreciate you for coming on, man, and for being somebody in the space that's pushing it forward, and also being an inspiration to other people who are getting started, people that see what you guys are doing and they're like, hell yeah, like I want to be a part of this. You are an amazing soul and you are a magnet for dope shit. Like you're a magnet for good people and good vibes. And SHILLR is lucky to have you, man. And also like you're just fucking awesome friends. So I really appreciate you coming through and just appreciate you doing what you do in this space, brother.
Dude, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, your words are just about to make my day. And yeah, thank you again so much for the support and all the kind words. It's been awesome chatting with you. It's been forever since I've been on the other side of an interview. So I came in like pretty nervous if I'm being honest, which is so funny because like I don't get nervous if I'm running the interview. So now I got to be like more mindful of like how I host spaces in the future. But yeah, dude, shout out to you as well. I mean, I've been seeing, who you've got on your interviews and just how you've done this podcast so far. It's been awesome to watch. So keep it up. And yeah, I would just say like if anyone's listening to this and you're like, oh, I want to get more involved in the space or I want to like learn more, just like listen to people's stories, try to connect. I mean, listen to Satoshi's mom's other podcasts. And yeah, I feel like that's where inspiration starts from. And now is a great time. Even though things are moving pretty quickly and it's a bull market, like it still feels like the quiet before the storm where you could actually like make connections and chat with people. But yeah, dude, thank you so much for today.
Dude, I appreciate those words as well. And absolutely, man, you're welcome back on here anytime. I would love to have you back. And thanks again, dude. And, I will reiterate, you are absolutely in at 5 the art. So keep crushing, bro. And the future is incredibly bright.
Hell yeah.
All right, brother. Well, I'll see you on the next Twitter, the next SHILLR space potentially, or let's just keep on pushing forward and keep on doing your shit and just keep crushing out there, man. Again, thanks for coming on. I'll wrap this one up. And thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been an epic one. Thanks, Bernardo.
Yeah, thanks so much, man.